There is no mix bus in Atmos. So what am I doing with all of this hardware? How do I use this hardware in Atmos? How do you compare the Stereo Master to the Atmos version when you're listening to see if the Atmos version sounds better or worse than the stereo? I've been getting questions through messages and comments for months now on how I handle all of this stuff. There's a lot of uncertainty about all this Atmos and how we move forward and how similar or dissimilar is it to stereo. So today, we're gonna dig into that a little bit. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm Cool Caparoon. Thank you for stopping by for another video. So we're gonna tackle all of these things and probably more by the time I work my way through this video, but I wanna tackle the very first one. And that is, so many people have asked me how you compare the stereo release to the Atmos mix. How do you flip back and forth between the two and actually tell if you like the Atmos better? Because there's a huge amount, unfortunately, of bad Atmos mixes out there. And there's a lot of people that thinks Atmos sounds like crap because they've probably only experienced the bad ones. Now, music is subjective. All of this is subjective. So what I think sounds incredible, you might not. However, I've put together two playlists. The first playlist, and I'll put both of them in the description down below. They're both Apple Music playlists. I should start there. Spotify doesn't support Atmos yet. It's come out in a few magazine articles that Spotify has an Atmos studio or two, so they're likely working on it. But Spotify is the only major streaming service to not support Atmos. And personally, in my opinion, it's because their codec is the lightest weight, smallest file size codec of pretty much all the streaming platforms. Atmos files are big files. I personally think Spotify doesn't support it yet because they literally don't have the bandwidth to support it. Outside of that, most everyone else supports it. Tidal, Amazon, Apple Music, like pretty much everybody. I personally think that Apple Music is the best. Apple Music pays nearly double what Spotify does to the artist. Apple Music is not trying to overturn the Music Modernization Act. Apple Music's better. It sounds better. They treat artists better. They pay artists better. I use Apple Music. So there's two playlists in the description below to Apple Music. The first playlist, let's do three playlists. The first playlist is to all of my Atmos mixes that have come out. At the time of filming this, there's only 3 out. There might be a 4th one out by the time this video gets posted, but follow that playlist, add it, and it will constantly get updated. Every single song that I mix in Atmos will eventually make its way onto this playlist. And we're gonna get to how you compare the stereo to the Atmos here shortly. There's a second playlist down there that I have cultivated, and it's a constant work in progress. I'm trying to build a playlist of songs where the Atmos version sounds better than the stereo version to me, in the room and on headphones. My thought process behind this is if I create a playlist where I think the Atmos version sounds better than the stereo version in my studio and on the headphones, then this can be kind of an ultimate reference guide for maybe what we should shoot for when we're mixing in Atmos. There's a third playlist down below of a whole bunch of other songs that I've worked on that have been released for a long time, and it is not an Atmos playlist. However, some of the Atmos stuff will make it onto that playlist. Go add those playlists. So how to compare the stereo to the Atmos version has to do with Apple Music. Basically, what you want to do is you want to put on your AirPod Pros, AirPod Maxes, whatever earbuds that you have that support Atmos. And when you're on Apple Music on your iPhone, all you got to do is swipe down from the top right of your phone, long hold on your headphone volume control, and then you can turn Atmos from fixed to head tracked or off. And what this does is this literally will fix the Atmos space, so no matter where you turn your head, it's like you're facing forward. If it's on head tracked, and I don't like this, and I don't like that Apple Music even has this particular feature personally, then your phone becomes the front of the room. So you have to hold your phone up like this and face your phone. And if you turn like this, it would be like sitting in this chair and turning. It's gimmicky. I don't particularly love it. The real magic is when you go back and forth between off and fixed. Now, what this does when you toggle this back and forth while listening on Apple Music is you are literally switching back and forth between the Stereo Master, not the fold down, the Stereo Master, and the Atmos mix. And this is how you compare the stereo to the Atmos and see which you like better. This is how I compare. Now, I'm pretty confident in saying that all of my mixes in Atmos that I've released so far, I think the Atmos mix crushes the stereo. It's got more dynamic range. The quieter parts are quieter. The loudest parts are louder. The low end feels more full, more solid, more unrestricted. There's so much perceived space in the Atmos versions. I'm full in on it. I'm all in on it. Now, again, there are a ton of terrible Atmos mixes, and most, I mean 80% of them that I pull up, I don't like. I think there's huge room for improvement. So take that for whatever it's worth. Okay, next up, how do you handle the mix bus when you're mixing in Atmos? Because there is no mix bus anymore. There's no 2 bus that we're sending all of the music through. Now, there are a couple things that I personally do to get around this. One, I still bus a handful of things. I still have a drum bus and a parallel drum bus. I still compress the parallel drum bus. And in my parallel drum bus is the kick and the snare and the toms, all the shells, the hi-hat, and usually the overheads depending on the song. I will usually spread the room mics out around the room, but this, I think this is really important for the genres that I work on, more dense, more aggressive genres of all genres, but they're almost always more dense and more aggressive. That's my style. And so for me personally, it's really important to keep that intact. Drums go in the front, in the left and right, just like normal. And I treat everything about the drum kit exactly how I would as when I'm mixing in stereo. So that's where all the hardware comes in. I still have a kick EQ and a kick compressor, a snare EQ, a snare compressor. I still have my drum bus compressor, and everything else about how I would mix a drum kit gets done identically, except for sometimes the room microphones just go in a different spot in the room. Sometimes those room microphones stay in the front, and literally everything is exactly the same. Now, as far as getting around a mix bus, so to speak, it's interesting. I personally don't feel the need to use like a bus compressor to glue everything together, glue it together. Because for me personally, it's spread out around the room, and I don't feel the need to do that when it's spread out around the room. And when you put on headphones, and after it's released on Apple Music, for instance, I still get the sense of space, and so I don't really feel the need to send everything to a compressor. It's just different feeling. And so while I do use bus processing all the time, I still have a full analog vocal chain, and I will still commonly send guitar buses, acoustic buses, piano buses out through hardware and do it pretty much exactly how I would do it when mixing stereo. There's not one bus that every piece of music actually goes through when I'm mixing in Atmos. Now, what I do is spend a lot of time using limiters and clippers to reduce dynamic range to get the same amount of energy into an Atmos mix, the same amount of density into elements within the mix that the stereo version would have. But to me, this is the best of both worlds. I can compress and limit my drums and get that explosive character, that super aggressive character, but the low end goes to the LFE. That's not compressed, so all the bottom end is not compressed. I can crush that vocal as hard as I'd ever want to, just like I would any other production, but that piano, maybe I want it to be incredibly dynamic, and I can just leave that piano completely uncompressed if I'd like to. And so while I'm not doing so much heavy lifting on a bus, I'm doing all of that heavy lifting on certain elements individually within the song. Personally, at this point, I feel pretty comfortable saying that a huge reason why there's so many bad Atmos mixes is people are not willing to go far enough, not willing to be heavy-handed enough to create the density and the energy in the Atmos mix that the stereo version has, or that the stereo version would have if you mixed it in stereo. Now, another fascinating question that I've gotten a handful of times is, does this new approach to Atmos and not having a mix bus, has this influenced how I approach mixing in stereo? It's a very interesting question because 50% of my work is still in stereo. I still mix in stereo all the time. I still master in stereo, my own productions, as well as mixing for other producers and mastering for other producers and other mixers. As of right this second, I don't think it's changed my approach because getting the same amount of energy out of 2 speakers it still requires the same techniques, in my opinion. Maybe I'm slightly less heavy-handed on it, but it still requires kind of the same techniques. So as of right now, as of the filming of this, and this could change tomorrow, but as of the filming of this video, I'm still operating exactly the same as I always have in stereo, and how I just described in Atmos. What do you do for reverbs and effects in Atmos? I have 2 reverbs that are 914 reverbs that are literally Atmos reverbs. The FabFilter Pro R, which is one of my favorite reverbs anyway, and recently I've gotten on the Liquid Sonics 7th Heaven. The 7th Heaven reverb is just unbelievable. And you put it on a track and you push that fader up and reverb comes out of everywhere, and it's unbelievable. There's a few other techniques, like I still use a lot of the same delays and a lot of the same echoes. Say there's a delay on a vocal, I'll have the vocal living right here and the delay might be coming out behind me, and that transfers really well to headphones. There's a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of ways to cascade reverbs where you would set up 3 different reverbs all on the same input, the same aux input, but you'd use a different pre-delay. So the reverb, it's the shortest pre-delay up front, a middle pre-delay in the back, and the longest pre-delay in the far back, sides and back. You get what I'm saying. And so the reverb literally moves through the room. There's a bunch of different techniques like that that are real fascinating, and I'm still figuring out exactly how I like to handle each one of those situations. For whatever reason, no matter how many times I say it, people cannot wrap their head around this. The Atmos thing is not about giving the consumer this experience of sitting in this room. It's not about giving them a surround sound experience even. It is literally just about giving someone one single file that can play on the largest of theaters down to your cell phone on the kitchen counter. Now, depending on the device you're listening on, maybe you'll get an enhanced listening experience, maybe you won't, but that's not the point. The point is we can deliver a single file, and then a huge amount of people can get a enhanced listening experience, and it future-proofs things where as more and more cars become Atmos capable. I've now ridden in 3 different cars that have Atmos in it, and I genuinely like the way it sounds in headphones better than the stereo, as long as the mix is good. And again, there's not a ton of them. But it's about being able to deliver a single file and have all of your bases covered. Now, at this point, you do still have to submit a stereo version of the file. There are some people that are using the fold down and mastering that and delivering that. I'm experimenting with that right now to see if I can get to an end result that I'm happy with. But you have to deliver a mastered stereo file and a mastered Atmos file in order for your song to be released. You have to release both, which plays into my point that I don't think stereo is going anywhere anytime soon. I don't think we ever get to a place where you can't release a stereo-only version of a song. I just don't believe that'll ever happen. I do believe that before long, a ton of music and most of the top music that comes out, chart-topping stuff, will only be released in Atmos. There won't even be a stereo version. And the fold down will just be what plays for everybody. I think that's where we're headed. Okay, that was a little bit longer than I expected it to be. If you have any questions about Atmos, about the workflows, about my thoughts on anything, drop them in a comment down below, because I will likely just keep doing these update videos as I navigate through this and I work my way through this. I will keep updating you guys on my thoughts, and then someday before long, I will start the tutorials. Now, if you're curious about the hardware that I use on any particular source, there's links down below for all of the gear that I use, every single thing, and just about all of those links go to Sweetwater. So anytime you guys need to purchase any piece of musical gear whatsoever, jump on any one of my videos and click on any one of the links in the description below. And once you're on the site, you can purchase absolutely anything you need. And when you do that, it costs you nothing extra, but it goes a long ways to help me keep making videos like this and hopefully keep educating people about what's happening and informing people on how I'm handling things. So thank you so much to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video, and thank you to you guys for using those links anytime you need to purchase anything at all. And if you've made it this far and you're not subscribed yet, I feel like I've earned your subscription. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button, 2019 style. All right, we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.